It changes from day to day. What's your favorite color today? Probably brown, she answered, glancing down at her sweater. I thought for a moment about the vibrant colors most humans tended to wear, likely trying to make themselves stand out. It made sense that Bella would rather blend in, choosing a more neutral palette for her wardrobe. However, it struck me as odd that she would say it was her favorite color. Brown? I asked, disbelieving, and wondering if she'd just said the first thing that popped into her mind. Sure. Brown is warm. I miss brown. Everything that's supposed to be brown, tree trunks, rocks, dirt, is all covered up with squashy green stuff here. Her face had pulled together into an almost scowl, and I had to smile. I kept forgetting that Forks wasn't exactly her ideal environment, that she was only living here out of selfless desire to let her mother live her life. I watched her eyes closely as they softened, and noticed the way her dark brown sweater made them look even deeper than usual. They perfectly matched the color of her hair, which I suddenly had the desire to run my fingers through once more. As she smiled up at me, I was struck by how everything about her was warm and kind, and in that instant I understood her answer. You're right. Brown is warm, I said, brushing her hair back behind her shoulder. It felt like silk in my hands. We pulled up to the school, and I instantly wished I had driven slower. I wasn't ready to let her go yet. What music is in your CD player right now? I asked, figuring if her favorite color changed daily, there probably wasn't much point in asking what her favorite song was. Maybe I would find that Bella was never exactly the same person from day to day. Living such an unchanging existence, I liked the idea that I would have to pay attention each moment I was with her, to figure out exactly what mood she was in and what she would like at any given moment. Linkin Park, she said, smiling in such a way that I knew there must be a story behind it. I grinned at her in return, reaching to pull my own copy out to show her. It was always nice when I learned something else we had in common. Debussy to this? I asked skeptically, hoping she'd explain what the look had meant. Instead, she just stared at the CD and shrugged. Sensing she still wasn't truly at ease talking about herself with me, I exited the car and walked around to open her door for her. I figured it would be easier for her if we were at school, around other people, where she knew I wouldn't ask her anything too personal. She beamed up at me when I took her hand and helped her out, which sparked another curiosity. Not used to being treated like a lady? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. I had to admit though, I had been wondering about whether or not she'd been in any relationships back in Phoenix. I didn't want to embarrass her by asking her outright, so I hinted around the subject, hoping she'd tell me something. Just because you're following a different generation set of rules for being a gentleman, she teased. Then, her expression changed again and she looked meaningfully at me. You never did tell me how old you are. Nope, today is my day, I said, amazed that she was still trying to turn the conversation back to me. I was never going to get any of my questions answered at this rate. You'll have another turn, I promise, but for now, I want to learn about you. She blushed, but gave my arm a little squeeze as we turned and walked toward the school. Okay, so today you like brown, and you're either listening to Debussy or Linkin Park. If I were to, say, take you to a movie, what type of movie might you want to watch? Honestly, I'm not too big into movies, but I'll watch pretty much whatever is on. I guess if I have to choose, I prefer comedies. Action movies are okay, just none of that ridiculous horror, monster, zombie nonsense. Oh, no, none of that. You prefer hanging out with the real monsters. She scowled at me, so I quickly continued before she could start lecturing me on the way I regarded myself. What I mean is, yes, the vampire will make a note not to take you to any zombie movies. Her face relaxed as I laughed, and we continued our purposefully slow walk to her first class. If you don't care much for movies, what would you say is your favorite way to pass the time? She dropped her gaze and her cheeks turned pink. Go on, I urged. Aside from spending time with you, she mumbled, almost to herself, I really like to read. Her remark made my insides feel like they were going to burst, but I forced myself to keep going as if she hadn't said it. Clearly she was embarrassed, although if she had any idea how much I loved being with her, she'd know there was no reason to be ashamed. What type of books do you read? The classics, mostly. Boring answer, right? Far from it, I assured her. The fact that you appreciate the great literary masters of times past, just shows that you have very refined taste. We talked about her favorite books until we reached her English class, and in a very selfish moment I almost considered asking her to skip so we could spend the day talking. Her first 2 classes were right next to each other, so it would be 2 hours before I'd be with her again, although I would be spending every minute watching her through the medium of those around her. See you soon, I forced myself to say as she grinned and ducked into the classroom. At least she seemed excited that I was so eager to spend as much of the day as possible with her. Bella's classes were uneventful, and for the most part her friends were keeping their thoughts to themselves. Although Mike's mind was racing with questions about how serious she and I were, he kept his conversation to polite comments about their classes and the weather. I left my own class the second the bell rang and moved at slightly more than acceptable human pace so that I was waiting at the door when Bella left Spanish. How was class? I asked, stifling a chuckle at her confused expression when she saw me waiting. Didn't you come from the other end of the building? No one was watching, I assured her. She sighed, looking at me disapprovingly as we began walking. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be? I asked, not wanting to waste a moment that could be spent getting to know her better. I wasn't sure how often she would be willing to let me do all the talking. Honestly, back in Phoenix. I really love it there. Maybe it's just because it's familiar, but it's hard to imagine wanting to live anywhere else. Not that I've seen too many places. So you haven't traveled much? A little, when I was younger, but Mom never liked going too far from home. I mean, when Forks felt like I'd really gone someplace, that must say something, she laughed. Would you like to travel? Of course. Eventually. Any place in particular? I couldn't help but think of all the different places my family and I had lived. Moving every few years grew monotonous, but it had allowed us to experience an endless number of new things. Unfortunately, we were somewhat limited in our destinations, assuming we wanted to spend any amount of time outside during the day. The Northwest had been serving us well for quite some time, and I suddenly found myself wishing Bella were happier here. As for the U.S., I'd like to see some East Coast cities. I've really only been on this side of the country. How about internationally? Can I just say everywhere? She asked with a laugh. Okay, everywhere, I grinned. I've never known Bella had such an interest in traveling, and my mind instantly launched into all the places I could take her. It probably wasn't the most logical path for my thoughts to be taking. Where would you go first? Europe, definitely. Carlisle spent a lot of time in Europe. You two should really talk sometime. He has an incredible amount of knowledge about a seemingly endless number of subjects. It sounds wonderful. You must have learned so much from him over the years. Yes, he's been wonderful to me. In many ways a father, often a teacher, always a friend. With that thought, we reached her next class and I reluctantly let her go once more. I'll be counting the minutes until lunch. Coming from someone who doesn't eat, I'll take that as a compliment, she said with a wide grin as she turned to step inside. The minutes dragged, and when lunch finally arrived, she greeted me with another huge smile. We sat at the same table we had the previous day, and again, the eyes of the school seemed to be on us. What does he see in her? Jessica thought, rudely glaring at us. Had to be Bella. It just had to be her that made the guy want to date, Mike thought angrily. Yet again, Angela's kindness helped me to block out everyone else's infuriation inability to mind their own business. They look really happy. It's nice he finally has someone, she thought, smiling and waving at Bella as she passed.